Cases are now called 20-3466 for the state of Texas versus Rakeem Roche. Is it Roche or Roche? Roche and 234596, the state of Texas versus Jalen Lott. The defendants are present. You come across the bar. Y'all come forward. We're not going to do it out in the crowd
at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody can sit together and we'll just, if that's all right. Is that a problem? That's not, I don't know if everybody's getting along or not.
I'm fine. We can sit, come on, let's have a seat, Roche. Have a seat.
No problem. All right, Jalen Lott, we're gonna do Jalen Lott first, please.
Judge, I believe we agreed to do Jalen Lott second.
Why, who agreed to that?
You did.
I did that?
If you recall, Mrs. Norman, I didn't request it, it was her request in turn. But no, I mean, it's not, she requested from you and then you said.
Okay. I'm flexible on it. Is that what y'all want?
That's what we agreed to. That's what we're asking.
Who agreed to that? We all did?
You and I agreed, Judge. I asked
Well,
that Jalen be second and you said yes, so that's an
Okay.
agreement.
Any problem with that, Langston Adams?
That's not a problem. I mean,
Okay,
I be witnesses, I want to call, but it's not gonna be long.
okay, all right, then we'll do yours first then.
Good.
Mr. Roche.
But Judge, I do ask that before you sentence my client, you hear what Mrs. Norman has to say. And then afterwards, I don't mind going first, we go first. But I'm just asking that you hold that,
I don't have a
hold
problem.
that
with that.
decision until after you hear what they say as well.
Happy to
Because I
hear
think
it.
that's gonna be important in lieu of what I'm about to say.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I don't understand, but I will shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, I
Okay.
promise you, it'll all connect in a second.
All right, on Mr. Roche in 234664, the court has received a pre-sentence report in this case. Have the parties had an opportunity to review it? Any corrections or changes to it? Are we
Yes.
asking the same questions for the other defendant, Mr. Lott?
Yes, we're gonna have corrections and additions to the first portion of the sentence investigative report that has police and court version. We're gonna be adding to that, and we will have a correction to that.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Mr. Roche, would you raise your hand?
I'll do that
Oh,
for him.
awesome.
Yeah, I'll administer the oath. I'm not sure the defense attorney can accomplish that effectively and enforceably under the law, since you're representing him. All right, you're going to be testifying, Mr. Roche, correct?
Right.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm any statements you make today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. Mr. Roche, would you state your full name for the record?
Here, why don't you do this? Come on up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay,
And you can come up to the lectern.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
all right. All right, Mr. Roche, would you state your full name for the record? And who do you have present on your behalf here in the courtroom today?
Barbara, my cousin, my brother, my fiance.
All right, and did we get character letters from several of them? And are we asking the court to look at these character letters for purposes of sentencing? Right? And what I'll do is, once you finish the testimony, I'll submit these letters to the court, okay? She has more, okay, let me get that from her real quick. All right, now, Judge just asked the question, he said, hey, are there any additions, corrections that we want to add to the pre-sentence investigative report? And did you hear me say, yes, they are, right?
Yeah.
All right. If we look at the first paragraph of the pre-sentence investigative report, it identifies that specifically that the first victim, Rudy Vasquez, stated that two black males approached him, Joel Martinez, and demanded money for them. A struggle ensued, shots was fired, and the subject wearing the red ski mask obviously is the one who did the shooting, because Joel Lopez Martinez ran inside his house, and I guess while he was running inside his house, apparently he was shot and killed. All right. All right. But when judge asked, hey, do we have any additions or corrections? One thing that the PSI does not tell our judge that I think that's relevant for sentencing, because if I'm a judge, I'm going to want to know this,
Okay.
is who was the shooter, right? Right? So who was the shooter is very relevant to sentencing for determining how much time you're going to get, how much time the shooter is going to get. Would that be correct? You understand that?
Yes, yes.
All right. And in this particular case, did you have an opportunity to speak directly to Jalen Lott? Did you have a chance to talk to Jalen Lott?
Yes.
Are you familiar with his voice?
Yes, sir.
Do you know his voice? When talking with Jalen Lott, did you get a 2-minute video with Jalen Lott where Jalen Lott admits that he is the shooter and he's the one that's the shooter in this case?
Yes.
Right? And that particular video, that particular audio would be this. All right, so when judge asks, hey, are there any additions or corrections to the PSI? This is a conversation between you and this man right here, Mr. Lott. Mr. Lott, is that correct?
Right.
And y'all are having a conversation about this particular case, the death and the killing of Mr. Joel Lopez Martinez. Y'all are talking about that particular case, aren't y'all?
Right.
And in y'all talking about that particular case, Mr. Lott does not know that he's being recorded, does he? He's talking freely and he's talking just using loose language, isn't he? And in talking freely and using loose language, he's telling you, I'm not telling, that's his language. He's not talking to police. He's not telling shit, right? He refers to Marsha Norman as his lawyer and said, and talks about her and say, we didn't pay her to take a plea. We paid her to get out of it. I'm not taking a plea on this plea. That's what he's saying, right? And in this particular case,
Is there a reason you need to shout?
oh, I'm sorry, I can go down. I apologize. In this particular,
And also, as that wouldn't, what you have done so far on that purported recording would never be admissible in any court in the way you've done it so far, because there is no time, place, circumstances that show any relevance or genuineness about it. And if you're going to let me, if you're going to submit it to me for me to consider, you need to use the rules of evidence to introduce it so that we have validity and relevance and authenticity of it.
okay.
Because that could have been made 10 years ago. I don't know. You haven't impressed this court yet on when and what the circumstances were of that meeting
Okay, let me ask you that.
to make it admissible in the first place.
When the recording that we just listened to, when was that recording made?
I had to look on my phone.
Or was it made after the death of Mr. Velasquez? Right? Was it made after the charges were filed for murder on both you and Mr. Lott? Was it made after then?
Yes.
Where were you when the recordings was made? Where were you?
Exact location.
Well, where were you with him? Yeah, exact location. Where were you?
Talking in the street.
Y'all were talking in the streets and y'all were in the streets of Port Arthur. And this would have been after the date that Mr. Velasquez was killed, right?
Yeah.
And in that recording, Mr. Lott says that was his work, right?
Yes.
He says when y'all are talking about the murder, what do I look like telling on you? Is that what he says?
Yes.
He goes on to say, this was not your work. You ain't even do that, fam. Is he talking to you?
Yes.
Is Mr. Lott saying, I banged him, send me up the road? So when Mr. Lott says, I banged him, who did Mr. Lott bang? Who did he bang?
Once again, do I need a street talk dictionary here to use?
Oh.
Let's use, if you're going to use street language, let's use the conventional English language to translate it.
I can
So we
translate.
know what the terms you're intending mean.
I can do that.
Come on, we're not going to be pulled down to this low level of communication. Let's use the
I can do
English
that.
we learned in school.
All right.
Judge, and with all due respect, I of course love the court's objection to this testimony.
Yeah.
I've been sitting here in fairness trying to let Mr. Langston correct whatever he thinks is wrong with the PSI, but this audio tape, this language, this whole line of questioning and back and forth is inadmissible. First of all, the court's aware of that. Mr. Langston cannot cure the defect of it. He cannot make it admissible, but it's been fun to listen to. So I renew my objection. It's inadmissible. If he wants to correct his report, fine.
Okay, overruled, but the court will consider only evidence that is admissible, is relevant, is admissible under the rules of evidence. It doesn't give anybody a fair opportunity to ensure that it has a validity, which is what the whole rules of evidence are all about. But you're allowed to attempt to get your point across and go ahead.
So when you're talking directly to Mr. Lott, and we heard the recording, right?
Yes.
Right. Mr. Lott specifically tells you in this recording, you ain't got blood on your hands. So when Mr. Lott says you ain't got blood on your hands, how did you interpret that?
They were ensuring that I know I did not hit intent or kill anybody.
Okay, so for the purpose of adding to this PSI, when the PSI is unclear as to who was the shooter, in that video, did Mr. Lott make it very clear that he's the one with blood on his hands? Did he make that clear?
Yeah.
Did you actually see with your own eyes, not only listening to what Mr. Lott say, but did you see Mr. Lott shoot and kill this man in cold blood? Did you see it with your eyes?
I tell you that it would be a lie.
What did you see?
All I know is the shot went through the door. So I mean, I can't just sit there and lie to you.
Who was behind the door?
Guessing the man that passed away.
Did you shoot anyone behind that door? And did he tell you you don't have blood on your hands? Did he tell you, send me up the road, I'm tired of this?
Yeah.
What else?
Well, excuse me, I'm just going what was on
Let's move
audio.
along.
Okay, well, as far as this, let's end on this point for this particular area. Throughout the PSI, you have indicated remorse for the man's death, haven't you?
Yes.
Right? You indicated remorse in this PSI when we look under defendant's version and you say, me and my friend was at someone's house with intentions of robbing them, didn't plan on anyone getting hurt. I was there, but did not shoot anyone. I'm remorseful about the circumstances that took place. That's what you said, right? But when Mr. Lott talked to you, he called this case. That's the language that he used. You want to play it again? That's his language. You remember that? So in terms of remorseful, Mr. Lott tells you what he thinks about the case, doesn't he?
Yes.
If you go on in this PSI,
Wait,
I'm sorry, I'm going to,
I know there's contrasts here in the pre-sentence report. But each person stands on his own circumstances. All you're doing is condemning the other defendant, who may have his own matters to deal with. But we're here in this particular hearing, right this moment, we're dealing with your client and his culpability.
let's deal,
Not comparing it. I've seen the comparison, but
and I was only
we're
adding.
spending a lot of time condemning the co-defendant or Mr. Lott. But that's not your job. Help your clients so I can understand what the circumstances are that are unique to him when this court enters its sentence. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about your circumstances. Would you agree with me that we made it very clear who shot and killed the man? Would you agree with that? That right? And the shooter in this case is Jalen Lott to my right. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the positives in you. When we look at this PSI report, if on specifically when you were evaluated and screened, you scored, TRS scored low risk for you. All right. Let's talk about you. To my understanding, you have no prior felony criminal history. Is that right? And then the only misdemeanor history that I see in this report is a possession of marijuana where you got pretrial diversion. Is that right? Graduated. When you graduated from high school, what did you graduate from high school from?
I was talking about like off the probation.
Oh, from probation. But I said, well, where did you graduate high school from?
More.
When you graduated from high school, did you become employed?
Yes, sir.
And becoming employed, where did you work?
I started working when I was 16.
And in working when you were 16 years old, how many jobs have you had?
I worked a lot of them.
Do you have a family?
Yeah.
And do you have children?
Yes.
Who are your children?
Ryan Roche, Young Roche.
Are you asking the court to consider that you have children, you had no prior felony criminal history, and your misdemeanor history was limited? I'm looking at this possession of marijuana. So if we look at the fact that he's the shooter, you have low adult criminal history, are you asking the court for purposes of this cap to take that into consideration?
Yes,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's possible.
All right. Are you also asking the court to take into consideration that unlike Mr. Lott, you accepted responsibility and you were remorseful? Is that the case?
Yes,
And even more so on page 3 and 4 of the pre-sentence investigative report, where Mrs. Candy Banks, who is making the recommendations and she's writing this report, says the defendant did admit to his involvement in the plan to rob the victims. He went on to say he looks at life much different since it's taken place and plans to do better moving forward. The defendant stated that he was not thinking about his children or anyone else at the time, but realizes that he could receive prison time and not be able to be a part of their lives for some quite time. That's what Mrs. Banks said. Is that all true and correct? So when we look specifically at what the agreed range of punishment on this case from 5 years up to 20, considering you've accepted responsibility, he has not, he's the shooter, you are not, you have no limited criminal history, I can't speak to his, and then moreover, you have a family and you have had steady employment. Is that correct? Right? And he's the one who said, send me down the road, right?
Yeah.
So if the judge is to give him his wish and send him down the road, are you asking based upon what you've testified to now, that the judge, if he does, well, the sentence that he give you, it'd be on the lower end, and we're asking for 5 years on the lower end. And do you see why we're making that recommendation?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, here are the letters that you have. Are you asking me to submit these letters? Did you hear my request for Judge Stevens to hold his ruling in abeyance until he's heard from the other side? Did you hear me say that? And after he has a chance to look at these particular letters, are you
How many of these? How many are these?
I didn't count.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think
You want to refer to these as like defendant's exhibit 1 for this hearing?
Yes, sir. Defendant's
Okay.
Exhibit 1. So for purposes of our time, you have several people here on your behalf, right?
Yes.
Collectively, what would those letters say about you as it relates to punishment in this case? Collectively, will your mom be supportive of you?
Everybody's been over.
All right. And are you remorseful and sorrowful for participating with Mr. Lott at the time Mr. Lott shot and killed this man? Do you wish that you were not with Mr. Lott when Mr. Lott shot and killed this man? Do you wish that you could take that day back when you were Mr. Lott, with Mr. Lott, and Mr. Lott shot and killed the man? Yeah, I'm gonna let you say so. Do you wish that you weren't there on that day?
Yeah.
All right. And we heard Mr. Lott in his own words, didn't we? You said that you want to say something, and I'll sit down now. Can you look at our judge, talk to him in your own words, and ask him, Judge, here's the reason why I'm asking for the 5 years. This is what you need to know. Talk to him.
And Dennis, please tell the jury to relax. It's going to be at least another 30 minutes. Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Talk to him directly.
Like today, sir, I didn't come with any sympathy or anything. Like, I'm really just owning up to my wrongs and being a man about the situation, and just praying that you some type of way. I know somebody got bodily injured, and so like I'm just hoping that you'll take not just sympathy, but take a little thought about my family and my kids. That's all I ask.
How old are your children?
I have a 7-year-old, she just turned 7, a 4-year-old, and a 9-month-old baby.
Okay, so 2 of them were at home when you were doing this?
Okay?
2 of them were at home when you were doing this? And now you're a family man now? Weren't you a family man on the date of this event?
Yes.
What is it you did that resulted in these 2 people being robbed and 1 being killed? What did you do? I'm reading it, but I want to know what you're going to admit to under oath. A man who should have been at home with his family.
All I can admit is being there.
What did you, you just were standing there like a bump on a pickle? What did you do? What did you do in playing the part, sir?
I went along with the whole.
What did you do? Tell me.
I'm telling you honestly, like I was involved. Like, that's all.
You're just saying I was involved. Be specific.
I didn't shoot anybody.
You robbed these people, didn't you?
We didn't take anything.
Sir, weren't these 2 people, these 2 victims here, approached by y'all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did 1 or more of you have a gun and threaten them?
Yes, sir.
All right, and here, tell me what you did other than just be an casual observer. You were standing there. I'm sorry, there were 2 of you had masks. What color was your mask you were wearing? What color? No, don't look at him. You're the guy that's charged. You're the one under oath. There's a black mask and a red mask. Which one was yours?
The real man,
Sir,
the real.
the red one.
Well,
I'm not through.
I'm sorry.
Talking to him. You passed it. The red one. Okay. The guy with the red mask was struggling with Joel. The guy with the black mask started sticking his hands in my pockets, asking me to give them my money. This is the statement under oath by the other victim who survived. The guy with the black mask started sticking his hands in my pockets, asking me to give them my money. He took $7 that I had in my right pants pocket. They were all $1 bills with some coins. The guy with the red mask came over to where I was at and started helping the guy with the black mask. The guy with the black mask struck me in the back of the head with the gun. Joel saw his chance to escape and he ran towards the door. I saw Joel open the door. The black male started yelling at Joel to stop. The guy with the red mask fired one shot at Joel. I hit the ground to get away. The black males fired 2 shots at me and they ran away towards the woods. They ran towards the firewood. I don't know who fired the shots at me. I ran into my room, put my feet against the door to prevent them from coming in, and hid in my room. Okay, now that's the guy who survived this robbery. And what's clear is that the two of you wearing masks forced these two people, these two victims, to stand there, and you and the Mr. Lott there accosted these two victims and robbed them. And when one of them fled, when they fled, the one was shot and killed. And you heard what he said about the guy with the red mask. So what else do you want to tell me?
I understand what you're saying. but
Yeah, I'm glad you do, because this is your life, sir.
I'm
But
saying what
here's
you're
the
saying.
deal, is that you and Mr. Lott there, according to the pre-sentence report that's been admitted, took freedom of choice away from these two victims. These two victims are being accosted by people with guns and masks. They're forced to do things that against their liberty, against their free choice. You took all of that away and then took the life away from one of them. And the other guy was lucky. He wasn't killed. But when you know a gun is present, y'all are forcing victims to give up their money, their liberty, threatening them with their lives. They've lost all independence. You've got the power. You know that. And whatever happens as a result of that, the blood's on your hands as well as his. You knew if you didn't have a gun, you knew a gun was being used that you were a part of. So y'all had the power over other people, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yes, sir, but I just trying to let you know I had no intention of hurting anybody. Like I didn't shoot no one.
What do you think when you're wearing a mask and somebody's got a gun? What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen if the poor people who are being victimized try to struggle?
Like
You can't add 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. That's simple.
Yes, you know what you're saying, but like if you know in your heart, like you had no plan on hurting anybody like this.
Why weren't you at home with your family? Why weren't you at home now? You're talking about how wonderful this family is and your family unit. Why weren't you at home with them instead of out there robbing innocent people and sticking guns in their face and being part of a killing
I never knew it was gonna be a killing, so. And I'm not saying it was right to be trying to rob nobody.
with a gun. You knew the guns were, what do you think the gun was supposed to be? What were you going to do if they tried to struggle with the gun? What were you going to do? Stick it in your ear, up your nose,
No,
under your armpit? What do you think the gun is going to be used for? If somebody tries to be combative and save their life.
I understand.
Okay, as long as you understand, because that's a simple one. That's why you don't do this kind of thing. If somebody dies as a result of this poor behavior, the blood is on your hands, not the innocent victims. They're struggling for their life. Y'all had a plan. Y'all had a plan. Y'all had masks, you had a gun, you had a plan to accost people. You worked it out and you found two vulnerable people and preyed upon them like vultures. They didn't have a chance. They're just sitting there. They don't have a weapon with them. They're just sitting there taking it. Anybody, I can't imagine being a part of something where I had the overall power over someone, their life like that. And then not understanding and appreciating the loaded gun is going to get used if they try to fight back and save their own life, which would be a natural tendency by a human. The guy was, and here's the deal. The guy was killed trying to flee. I mean, it's a natural tendency. He was just doing what nature, our creator, gave us to save our own lives, to try to save our lives when they're in jeopardy. That you're not supposed to be putting people in. That's not your job. It's our creator is supposed to decide who lives and dies, not you and your buddy. This is a terrible situation. This is terrible. And for you to sit here and play Jekyll and Hyde, like you're Dr. Jekyll, but we're Mr. Hyde at the time, it's schizophrenic. You're sitting there and you've got all these letters and all, but that's not the way you acted that night. I didn't see your family. You care about your family and other humans.
People make mistakes.
I'm sorry, and you pay for your mistakes.
I understand that.
All right, it's time to pay.
Just quick follow up.
I just wish this wouldn't have happened. This is so inexcusable. It not only gives you, your family, a cloud over all of them, but the city. You think Port Arthur isn't struggling enough with terrorism? But it's choices that the civilians, the citizens are making. You don't treat other people that way.
So just a quick follow up and then I'll sit down with you. I have a few more witnesses, but you do accept responsibility that you participated in a robbery, right? You do accept responsibility that you were there with Mr. Lott. You accept responsibility for that, right?
Yeah.
You accept responsibility for being there and it was two guys that got robbed, right? Right? But at the end of the day, if we take Mr. Lott at his own words, he say, you ain't do that, fam. That was not your work. That's Mr. Lott. You ain't do that, fam. That ain't your work. So when Judge asks to translate street language, when Mr. Lott is saying to you in his words, this ain't your work. In street translation, what does that mean?
I didn't shoot anybody.
Mr. Lott is saying you didn't shoot anyone. This ain't your work. You don't have blood on your hands. That's coming from Mr. Lott, and that's coming from your conversation with Mr. Lott that was recorded that I played for everyone to hear his voice. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Hold on.
Cell phones off, please.
There's a sign that's outside, that's been posted, I will pick up and take the cell phones. And I'm instructing the bailiffs, you find a cell phone open, you pick it up. You're not supposed to have cell phones in here. I know people do, but I don't want to see them. I don't want to know they're being used. I don't want to know that they're out. If they are, they're ours now. We've confiscated those. And you can be held in contempt of court. Is y'all gonna just sit around and not follow rules? Follow the rules, please. Let me get this clear. He pleaded guilty under oath to murder, hasn't he?
Under law of parties.
Sir, blood is on his hands.
Well, under law of parties, yes.
Law parties is the law.
Yes, law of parties.
Okay, let's get that straight.
Under law of parties.
He's not
yes.
sitting there by himself.
No, correct.
There were two people involved in this, and it was reasonable to see an outcome like this would happen, whether you shoot the person actually or not.
The only reason I think that's relevant, Judge, for purposes of sentencing, and I made it clear.
I understand.
And he's
But
not, my client is not.
When you say blood is not on your hands,
I
he
got it.
has pleaded guilty to murder. I
I see
know
what you're
it's
I
a
see.
wording thing,
I see what you're
but
saying.
you are responsible.
But Judge, like I said, for me, the only reason I brought all that out is you
You're
asked.
trying
for
to
a position.
compare the circumstances
Correct.
between the two parties.
And I think it's important for you, for your sentencing to know that by his own admission, Lot is the killer. Lot is the one who pulled the trigger by his own admission. And I played his voice for everybody to hear.
Your Honor, we're gonna object to this
He can-
continue.
I'm letting him
Nonsense.
talk. I'm letting him speak. Man, he's making an argument now, and parties are allowed to make arguments, and the court will give the credibility I deem it deserves. But he is pleaded guilty to murder, party or not. Somebody else can actually physically pull a trigger that you were responsible for.
That is absolutely correct.
And the way I'm reading this, both are responsible. And it wouldn't have happened had you, like you say now, been the family man you say you are and should have been at home, not robbing by force and with masks, innocent people who deserve to live.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, Kiana Banks. Purity Banks, I'm sorry. Come
Well,
forward.
Your Honor, the state would,
Oh,
has the right to cross examine.
my bad, I'm sorry, I didn't want. Well, no, he's gonna cross.
In just a minute. If you can be brief.
Yes. All right, Mr. Roche. If a Mr. Kirks, Joey Kirks had told detectives that you and Mr. Lott on the date of the murder went to the house to rob the victims, would that be correct?
You tell me if he said this,
Yeah, would that be correct? If he says that you and Mr. Lott went to the house on that date to rob the victims?
is that what he alleged?
I'm asking you a question. If that's what he said, would that be correct or no? Y'all didn't go to rob him? Okay. If he also said that Jalen Lott had told him that he was the one who shot and killed the victim, would that be correct?
Yeah.
If he also said,
Who's he?
this is Mr. Joey Kirks.
Yeah, we got a lot of people here and you're just using pronouns. Help us.
If Joey Kirks told detective also at that time that you shot afterwards on this date, would that be correct?
Yes,
So you did shoot.
not in the direction of the victim, but yes.
Now, that would, we're talking about amending the PSI. Would you want that included in there? You left that part out.
I mean, we had a conversation, I admitted my wrong.
You admitted to shooting earlier? Judge asked you a lot of questions. Where did you admit to shooting?
What's clear is, I think he has inferred that he made some bad choices. And he's part of this murder, but he wasn't the actual person who shot the weapon, that bullet that hit the victim who died. I think there's the distinction.
But you did shoot, correct?
Yes.
Was it in the direction of the other individual that was
I
there?
was in the house.
Now, you said you had 3 kids, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said you're here taking responsibility, is that correct? Now, if someone,
Am I wrong?
if one of those children were killed by someone, 2 actors, one of them is a shooter, but they're both acting together and your child's killed, what should happen to that individual?
I'm not saying like one child every go free, like I know I have confidence that he would be faced.
Well, what would you want? We talked about that your children. What would you want to happen to this individual who participated and ended up one of those children getting killed?
Somebody do a crime, they have to pay for it.
What do you think they should, what would you think they should receive for that?
He answered.
No further question.
Your Honor, I don't have any, I have Mrs. Kearney Banks.
Have a seat, sir. Thank you. Ms. Banks, come forward.
All right, Ms. Banks, you can state your full name for the record.
Kearney Banks,
And what is your relationship with my client, Rakeem Roche?
that's my fiance.
And when do you plan on being married?
It's just that I'm married. Like, 2-3 days.
Okay, let's get straight to the point. You heard about his family history, right?
Mhm.
You understand that he has 3 kids, right?
Right.
All right. How would you describe him as a family man?
He's okay with his kids. He's very good with his kids. Then he also takes care of me.
Okay, so he's providing support, right?
Yes, sir.
So for purposes of sentencing, we asked the court for a 5-year sentence. And in asking for a 5-year sentence in this particular case, with him being a family man, would your family need him back to help with the family?
Of course.
All right, he's expressed remorse and accepted his conduct in this particular case. Has he expressed remorse with you?
Always.
All right, so with this being a cap of 20 years, can you tell the judge in your own words, why would you be asking for the court to be on the lower end of the cap of 20 at 5? Tell him in your own words.
Because I feel like his kids need him, and even though he did make a mistake, which was a mistake, I feel like they need him, and he plays a big part in his kids' life. And he has a lot of things going on with other things that I don't want to mention, but his children really need him, and that's just the main reason to me. And I don't feel like he should be punished for it. I'm not gonna say
For doing
punished,
something
but
he did. He shouldn't be held accountable when
He
he
should
makes a
be held,
mistake.
he should be held
He-
accountable
he
for
will
what
be.
he did.
He
but
will
not
be
for what he
accountable.
didn't do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for, you have any questions? I mean, I don't know. All right, Mrs. Mr. Ms. Roche, Mom.
Thank you.
Go ahead. All right, would you state your full name for the record?
Renee Roche.
And are you my client's Rakeem Roche's mother?
Yes, sir.
So without regurgitating everything that we've already discussed, let me get straight to the point, all right?
Yes, sir.
You understand that your son, in fact, did not shoot and kill the deceased in this case, Mr. Lott did.
Yes, sir.
However, your son was a party to this offense, as Judge Stevens explained in his way of questions. You understand that, right?
Yes, sir.
So here's your opportunity, because Judge Stevens is going to do a sentence for Mr. Lott, and he's going to do a sentence for your son, Mr. Roche, right?
Yes, sir.
And obviously, we're asking for less time because Lott is the shooter, Lott is the killer, your son is not. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
In your own words, can you ask and plead to the court why you would be asking for the low end of 5? In your own words, talk to the judge.
Hey, Your Honor, I just ask you to have mercy on my son. I know he participated, but he cannot control nobody's friend. Okay, he didn't go there and intend to hurt nobody. And I don't believe Lott did either. You know, the way it happened, he shot him through the door. He didn't mean to shoot the man, but it just so happened when they went to do it, he was on something. He was on drugs.
Now, when you say he was on drugs, you're talking about Lott was on drugs.
Lott was on drugs. He was high
How do you know that?
because my son told me.
Oh, Your son told you.
Yes, he told me. You know, yes. And he didn't mean to do it either. I didn't mean to shoot nobody. He's not a bad boy either.
Is there
So
anything?
quite naturally, they bring masks and a gun and force people to give them money. You don't see anything wrong.
Yes,
with
sir,
it?
it's totally wrong.
Oh, it is totally
Yes,
wrong.
totally
And
wrong.
when somebody gets killed in that, you
Yes.
understand what- I'm
Yes.
sorry, let me speak and then you can rail.
Yes.
Okay. You see that the murder statute was instituted to encompass this kind of behavior. And that's why there's a range of punishment. From as low as 5 up to life in prison for murder. Because it has, every murder is unique with its own set of circumstances. But here, during what we have here really is, correct me if I'm wrong, a capital murder. And the state did not go after the death penalty, but the circumstances could well have caused them to do that under the law. Because when you are committing an aggravated robbery, which is what happens when you're robbing somebody using firearms, and somebody is killed in the course of that, they could get the death penalty. So let's not minimize this kind of set of circumstances. I mean, but for the decision that they made, there would have been only, they could have pursued 2 options, the death penalty or life without parole. But they didn't. They decided under the circumstances that they would go under the first-degree murder statute, where it's 5 to 99 or life. And here it's capped at 20 years. But to listen to people come up and try to minimize the behavior, let's walk it back. Your son and Mr. Locke there should have never even thought about doing this, especially with families. Number 2, shouldn't have worn masks to try to conceal your identity and defraud and deceive. Shouldn't have brought a gun. Shouldn't force people against their will to give up their money. And when someone flees for their life, no one should be shot at because they're doing what is a natural instinct that anybody would do. And that's run for their life because they weren't in control anymore. And then that's a final thing that's most important. No human should be in a position where they're not in control, that some other human has forced them to be in a situation where they are no longer in control of their destiny. But that's what your son and this other man did. And they made a conscious decision. And the way I'm hearing people talk, who seem to be very nice people. And here's the deal, they knew better. They grew up in an environment that is right from wrong. Why in the world they would make a bad choice like this is beyond me. But choices have consequences.
Yes, sir.
And we are all a product of each individual decision we make on our choices. Every day we have numerous choices we make, which dictate whether we go in that direction or that direction. Free will. Free will. Here's the deal. Your son and Mr. Locke exercised their free will. These poor guys, they lost their free will. And this is what our Creator endowed us all with. They took it away. Your son took it away. You're not supposed to be in a position where another human is in control of your life like this by duress. That's not right.
James Trail.
Can I say one more thing?
Then, yes, go ahead.
Sir, I understand the seriousness
All right.
of this situation, but I just ask you, could you please have mercy on both of them? Because, you know, sometimes they're not bad boys, so you send them down to prison and that just changed their whole attitude
Let me ask you,
about life.
man, the victims' families They're asking the same thing. Why wasn't mercy shown to them? One of the victims can't ever come back. He's somewhere. I guess in heaven or somewhere. We believe in that sort of thing. This is sacred thing. I mean, we're talking about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All of those were taken away. Who endowed us with that? It says our Creator. That's the way we formed this country together. Our Creator gave us these things. It's what we make of it. And when we minimize those important things, we must pay a price. Because we're on this planet together and we got to live honestly, harm no one, and give each person their rightful due respect. All three of those components, which encompass the 10 commandments and all laws, those three things were taken away. And now it's time to pay the price.
God have mercy on.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Trill, all right. Again, I'll go straight to the point.
Yes.
You're his father, right? And when I say his, I'm referring to my client, Rakeem Roche.
That's correct.
Like I've been doing with all of my witnesses. I don't want to speak for you. I want you to speak for yourself. Can you, in your own words, tell the judge why you're asking for leniency in this case, mercy in this particular case, and we asked for the 5 years on a 20-year cap? Talk to him in your own words.
Well, Judge, first of all, I'm in a crossroad because I'm in between both families. That was my in-laws over here. And I know them well. I know both of them as kids, but as they grow up, they fall down. We can only do so much as parents. And after things take part, they get older. They do their things that they gotta do.
I'm a parent and a grandparent. I
And
understand.
like I speak, just like I bring them in the world, I take them out the world myself, especially if they come at me. But a life was lost. And we can't get that back.
Plus, also remember,
Yes.
you have a second victim.
Yes.
The trauma of seeing your life pass by and you're just clocks tick away from being killed, watching your friend be killed, that trauma will linger.
That is correct. That is correct. So in terms and doing, and for us, somebody taking fault and everything else is like a marriage, you know, when two become one. So the two became one on this instance here. I can't speak for what needs to be said. The only thing I can speak for is maybe that as him, watching him in his last 2 years, what he's been going through and what he's been facing and what everybody been going through. I'm asking for leniency for us, him for his prison time. Now for us, anything else extra, what he got to do in there to prove himself, to be released from there, that's on his conscience and his will. But as a father, speaking for my son, I know his heart and I know his wrongs. Nobody's perfect, and I know he's not perfect, but he admits to what he have done. He's facing up to what he has done. The only thing I ask that the court be reasonable in that charge. And
All right, state your full name for the record.
That's all right, girl.
All right, and what is your relationship to my client, Mr. Roche?
So that's mom.
Okay, now, it's,
That's Dr. Shaw.
right, and you heard, and it's in the PSI where it's brought to the court's attention that my client has 3 children, right?
Right.
And I think you're the mother of the youngest child, right?
Mhm.
And I saved you last for one reason, all right? Mr. Roche has 3 kids and one of them is yours, right?
Right.
And if judge puts him in prison for 20 years or 5 years, obviously due to his action, Judge, we accept responsibility. Due to his action of being involved in this particular robbery, he's gonna be taken away from those kids, right?
Correct.
So here's for purposes of sentencing, where I want you to appeal to the court's mercy. Because we can appeal to mercy, that's relevant to sentencing, all right? How would you describe my client as a dad in appealing to mercy?
He's a wonderful dad. Like whenever he's needed or anything, or just, I wouldn't even say needed, he'll just, check on his child and bring things and, spend time as much as time as he can.
All right, does he provide for his kids? Is he financially? Is he taking, I know the other mother, the other two kids is not here today, and you can't necessarily speak for her, but you can speak to what you see. In what you see, does he take care of those other two kids?
Of course, he do.
All right, and at the time of this particular case, was he employed?
Yes,
And he was taking care of the kid, and you characterize him as a great dad, is that right?
correct.
So, remember I told you I was gonna save you for last, all right?
Mhm.
He made a poor decision, right?
Correct.
But those three kids didn't have anything to do with that decision, did they, right? And his decision is going to impact those three kids, won't it?
Yes,
So the real question becomes, for how long? Is it for 5 years or is it for 20 years? Because there's a cap of 20. You understand that, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of the impact that this case is going to have on those three kids, I want you to appeal to Judge Stevens for his mercy and ask for 5 years in your own words. I want you to appeal to the court's mercy, because obviously,
Okay, let her talk.
yeah.
Go ahead.
You say what you want to say to Judge, appealing for mercy. Talk to him. Look at him.
I understand that, Mr. Roche made a mistake. Of course, everybody makes mistakes. That's what everybody been saying, but, I would say 5 years or less is okay, because of course he do have kids, and at the time, he didn't think about it, of course, so he's gonna pay for his consequences. But, and he's a hardworking man, and, he's a good job as well. And his kids need him the most.
That's it. You want to pass the witness. That's all the witnesses I got. Yes, ma'am.
This man has, hold on,
I
man.
got a few questions.
This man has a chance to ask you some
Okay.
questions. He'll be brief.
Now, have you ever heard of the Texas Department of Criminal Mercy?
Mm-mm.
Have you ever heard of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice?
Yes,
Okay. And that's what the state's here for today, is justice. You understand that, correct?
correct.
Now, if one of your children were killed while being robbed, would you be up here asking for mercy or for justice?
I will be asking for mercy and justice as well. I understand people make mistakes. Don't get me wrong, people make mistakes and everything, but you, at the time, people don't be thinking.
So if one of your children were killed, you'd be asking for mercy and justice? What would justice be for you on that?
That's,
Justice or relevance, Judge.
it's
It's outside of,
you don't need to answer that. That's, at the end of the day, it's this court's decision. But it's kind of hard to put somebody in a position when they've not been in that position before. They would only be able to guess.
No further question. Your Honor.
Thank you.
that's all the witnesses I have, and I'm ready for argument. I don't have any other witnesses.
Okay, go ahead.
You want me?
You may.
Okay. Judge,
At the beginning of this pre-sentence investigative report, my client accepted responsibility for his actions. In his own words, he said, "I'm remorseful about the circumstances that took place." In Mrs. Candy Banks's recommendation, it seemed like to me, she's indicating that he was, to use her exact language, word for word, she says, during the pre-sentence interview, the defendant stated that he was very remorseful about someone's life being taken. And he continued to deny of being one of the shooters. Well, I think that that's clear today. Under the law of parties, yes, my client was involved in a robbery. Yes, my client did have a gun. Yes, by his own admission, he did shoot the gun in the air. He did do that. Under the law of parties, as you said, remember when I played Mr. Lott's video, this is what you corrected with me. I'm only making an argument, Judge. When you corrected, you said, hey, I played Lott's words. Well, Lott said, you don't have any blood on your hand. But then, Judge, you pointed out, you said, well, hey, you participate, you do have blood on your hand. So I agree, you do have blood. He does have blood on his hands. But at the end of the day, the court has wide latitude in this case to impose a sentence between 5 and 20 years.
What are you asking?
The reason that I'm asking for the 5 years is that since you have latitude, the man with the most culpability who should get the 20 years is the man who said this was my work. Is the man who said, I banged him, send me up the road. That's his words. The man who said that this case is basically, and I'm not gonna use the P word, P-U, you heard what he said. That's what he thought about this case. So in imposing a sentence, you got one guy who's remorseful, and then you got another guy who basically says, this case really ain't nothing. You heard the video, audio. So what I'm going, Judge, is this. Under the law of parties, they're both responsible. I totally get that. But who was the shooter by his own words? Who is the one by his language that has no remorse? Who is the one that's the killer, the cold-blooded killer in this case? The cold-blooded killer is Jalen Lott. Judge, when you look at my client's criminal history, felony history, at least from what I read, none. Misdemeanor history relevant, the possession of marijuana that he got pretrial diversion for. What do you know about my client? You know that he was employed at the time of this incident. You know that he graduated from high school. You know that he had 3 kids. You know that at least according to one baby's mama, or the mother of one of those kids, that he took care of those particular kids. But the biggest thing you know is what your own department tells you. When I look at this report prepared by Mrs. Banks, what does your department, what does your probation department tell you? I'm gonna read word for word. The TRAS scores indicate a low risk. He's low risk. So I'm not asking you to go off of what Langston is saying. Go off of what your own probation department is saying. He is low risk. So if you send him to jail for 5 years, when he comes out, at whatever amount of time he comes out of jail, right? Depending on what happens, I think you can rest with assurance that he is not going to be the type of guy that would ever cause a problem for this man in our courtroom, our chief of police, because I'm only responding because you mentioned in Port Arthur, you said, hey, should the citizens of Port Arthur have some kind of concerns about this? That's what the one thing that you were saying. And I agree with you. Citizens of Port Arthur should have concerns about conduct like that. We have our chief of police, Timothy Duraso, who's in the courtroom right now. He represents the city of Port Arthur. But what I would say is, in this case, based upon what you have heard, when he gets out of prison, Timothy Duraso is not going to have a problem with Raheem Roche. He's not. Timothy Duraso is not going to see Raheem Roche. Raheem Roche is going to be the type of guy that's going to be a productive citizen and makes everyone happy. Judge, I ask, as I previously, and I sit down now, I ask that before you pronounce sentence on my client, you hear what they have to say. All right. Thank you, Judge, for y'all for listening to me.
I'm going to ask you one question, which is rhetorical here, after listening to your argument and your points you've made. if I would have asked you the day before this event happened,
Mhm.
if Mr. Roche, your client, would be involved in a robbery and murder the
Mhm.
following day,
Mhm.
what would you have told me?
I would have said, I doubt that likely he has no prior felony history. He's a family man and he has kids. He's taking care of his kids. But I think what came from his mom is that people
What would you
make
say?
mistakes.
What would you have said?
Now, I would have said, I would have doubted that would happen. I said, no, I don't think that this would happen. I'm asking you a question directly. I would have said no.
And you would have been wrong.
Yes,
You would have been dead wrong.
right. I agree with you on that.
The point being is the argument you're making is he's a family man. He's got all this support.
Mhm.
The day before he was involved in a murder. Look, we all agree.
Mhm.
The circumstances here could have been charged with capital murder,
Yes, sir.
where the death penalty would have been an issue. But it wasn't.
Yes, sir.
But nonetheless, those are the same circumstances he has today that he was living with at that time, and he still elected to make poor choices.
Yes, sir.
With what I've heard from his family, it sounds like my family.
Yes, sir. He comes from a wonderful family, and that's why they're here too. Mom, dad, everyone.
And I can't even imagine doing this. Unless I was sociopathic of some sort. Nobody says they are. But this is behavior that is unlike what we're talking about. That they evolved from in their environment, in their household, but yet they did a terrible thing.
You're absolutely right.
And nobody's convinced me that the circumstances are any different, except they got caught. And they're about to be held accountable. But they're still family people from a family. What's to say? They're not going to make such a foolish decision again. But at the end of the day, it's the circumstances, criminal history, other evidence that we get to listen to about their character. But all this good character evidence still resulted in someone's death that they, as you point out, their blood is on each of their hands. And when you are robbing someone against their, forcing them at gunpoint to submit, and then shoot them just because they're trying to flee, anybody can see that that's a logical consequence that can happen in a circumstance where people have guns, the others don't, and the victims are being forced to submit. When they flee and are shot at, that's cold.
And
that's cold-blooded.
You're right, and I don't think he knew that Jalen Lott was going to shoot a fleeing man.
You don't think that was something that was a potential?
Yes, I agree with you, but he didn't know that Jalen was going to shoot.
Not looking at it.
Right.
I'm saying everybody's walking around with a crystal ball to see what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. But
you're right.
Their destiny was in your client's hands. Mr. Lott.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, he said, Judge, hey, I wish I was not with Mr. Lott on that day.
Every criminal who comes in here pretty much says the same. They wish they could take that back. They say that.
Yes, sir.
But we have too high of a crime rate.
That is true.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate you.
Now let's go to Mr. Lott, please. I'm going at the end. I'm going to assess sentence at the end in each case.
May it please the court.
Go ahead.
We've been sitting here for about an hour and a half.
You need to go to the bathroom?
Actually, I do, but I'm gonna hold it so we can all move on. Judge, we previously submitted some letters to the court.
Yes, ma'am.
I asked
Thank you for doing that because I was able to read those.
Yes, sir. I asked that be exhibit 1 in our punishment.
All right,
Argument.
it's done.
So Judge, I'm gonna ask you to do me one small favor.
Why don't you, do you have an exhibit sticker? I want 2 of them, defendants, for, Mr. Roche, these, defendants 1, and this is defendants 1 for Mr. Lott. Go ahead.
Judge, I'm gonna ask you to do me one small favor. You were kind enough to review all the reports. And if you don't mind, just for clarity's sake, if you would go back into the offense report with the red hat and the black hat, I'd ask you to just read that again briefly, who had the red hat and who did what, and who had the black hat and who did what. And I promise you, we're gonna be very brief.
Stand by. I need a, this, okay, this one. Here they are. These are defendants 1 of each case. And what I was reading from was the statement made by the surviving victim.
That is correct.
Who is Rudy Velasquez.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what do you want to do? I'm here.
Can you read who did what with the red hat and who did what with the black hat? What the red mask guy do?
I came outside and saw 2 black males hitting Joel, but Joel was fighting back. I noticed that they were trying to take Joel's wallet. The 2 black males kept yelling at Joel, "Give me all your money." The black males were tall and their voice sounded like they were young. One guy had on a black ski mask. The other one had on a red ski mask. I could only see their eyes. I know that they were black males because they weren't wearing gloves and I could see their hands. They both had black guns. When I walked outside, the guy with the black mask pointed a gun at me. They said, "Give me your money." The guy with the red mask was struggling with Joel. The guy with the black mask started sticking his hands in my pockets, asking me to give them my money. He took $7 that I had in my right pants pocket. They were all $1 bills along with some coins. The guy with the red mask came over to where I was at and started helping the guy with the black mask. The guy with the black mask struck me in the back of the head with the gun. Joel saw his chance to escape. He ran towards the door. I saw Joel open the door. The black male started yelling at Joel to stop. The guy with the red mask fired 1 shot at Joel.
That's it, Your Honor. Thank you.
Hold on, stand by. I hit the ground to get away. The black males fired 2 shots at me and they ran away towards the woods. Okay.
So, Judge, I've sat here, I've listened to a bootleg recording, I've watched Mr. Langston call my client a killer and yell and scream and pomp and circumstance and the whole 9 yards. Here's the truth. None of these people know which bullet killed the man. They know that both of these people fired shots. They don't know which bullet did what. They don't know which black male had which gun. That's the truth of the matter. We got offered a 20-year cap by the prosecution because Mr. Laird said, "I don't think Jalen Lott was the shooter." But today, if I call him to testify, he's going to tell you now he thinks Jalen Lott was the shooter. So the real crux of it, it doesn't matter who the shooter was. There's somebody dead. There's somebody dead. There's a victim dead who shouldn't be dead. He's dead because of you, and he's dead because of you. And that's what you came to this court and told the judge. I did it. But before I did it, I was a great guy. So you, Your Honor, you are in the hottest seat in this room. Because what you have are two conflicting stories. You've got the story of this guy that everybody loves. I've got preachers, I've got police chiefs, I've got, you name it. They're here to say he came from a good family and he's a good guy. I'm here to tell you, we're not asking for your mercy. We're not asking for a certain number of times. I trust you to make the right decision. But here's what we are asking for. We're asking for forgiveness from that family that has a loved one that dies. That's it. That is absolutely everything we're going to ask for. But let me not leave this unsaid. See, all of that nonsense. How did these guys get to that house in the first place? It's in the PSI report. I'm not going to say it out loud. The court has read the report. There is nobody in here with clean hands but me and you, and I don't know about them. But the fact of the matter is, you have two kids that were relatively decent until one bad night. And they took somebody's life and they need to go to the pen. So the only coin toss in this room is how long. I don't have to figure that out. I don't have to ask you for a number. I don't care what your number is. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you were right. It could have been a capital murder. And when we got a 20-year cap, that knocked off 79 years. Now, is 20 years good for my client? No. Do I think it's fair? It's irrelevant what I think. What matters is no matter what you do, that dead person's not coming back. And when you send these kids to the pen, they're not coming back the same. Because a whole big different part of them is going to die. You know it and I know it. You know exactly what jail is like. You know when Jalen Lott gets out of jail, Jalen Lott won't be Jalen Lott anymore. His family knows it. And the other interesting thing is, since Mr. Adams likes to point fingers, we had to call the police chief to protect Jalen Lott's grandma because they were being threatened by I don't know who. We didn't make a recording of who did it. So this is a mess. It's a mess and you have to figure it out. And right about now, I'm glad I'm not you. I'm not going to call 15 witnesses to tell you how great he is. That doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you, do what you think is right. And we're going to live with it. Because they have to live with it.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'd submit to the court that the citizens, the state and the court are all tired of this gun violence that's going on in this community.
We are.
And
Still, these two people
yes,
aren't being judged by general gun violence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Be judged by the circumstances, their conduct, and their character. Go ahead.
Both the defendants here, they both pled guilty to murder. And as the court knows, they could have received up to the 99 years. And the defense, says the court's in, it's a mess and you're in the hot seat. But the state would submit, Your Honor, you're really not. The state's there's already been mercy given, 20-year cap in exchange for someone else's life being taken. They would submit that's nothing, 20 years for someone else's life being taken from them innocently. There was no evidence that either one of the victims in this case had guns. There was no evidence that they were doing anything bad to either one of the defendants. And Your Honor knows under the law, they're both guilty of murder. Under the law of parties, they agreed to go and rob these individuals. They went over there with weapons. There's evidence that whichever one shot and killed him, they both fired weapons at each one of these individuals. And just because one of them happened to be a bad shot, there's not two dead people. There's not two dead victims. And the state thinks 20 years is very appropriate for both individuals. Thank you.
Anything else to add by either party? If not, the court is on each of these cases with Jalen Locke, 234596, and Rakeem Roche, 20-34664. I'm going to do this sentencing presentation and the findings together. And then the sentences shall be assessed independently. That on each of these cases, the defendants have pleaded guilty to the first-degree felony of murder voluntarily, knowingly, intelligently. There was sufficient evidence supporting their guilty pleas from State's Exhibit 1 admitted in the guilty plea hearings on each case to find the defendants guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the indictments of murder in each of these cases. I so find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the first-degree felony of murder. I am following this agreement in each of these cases, and the defendants are sentenced to confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve a term of 20 years in each case. And in each case, the judgment shall show that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used in the commission of each crime. There are these times where I wish that I could have, the day before this happened, seen you and said, you're about to make a bad choice tomorrow, which is an aberration from the way you apparently were reared in your family and your criminal history. But it was a selection each of you made. You planned out a method of, by using masks to try to hide your identity and using guns when the victims were unable to defend themselves. You preyed upon a fellow human being, two fellow human beings, threatened them with their lives to take their money, what little money. And we're talking about $7 a person's died over, $7. And when they had the audacity to try to flee, one was killed. The audacity. I put that in quotes because it was, this whole event was compounded by what actions you took during the course of these bad choices. And even though one or the other may have actually pulled the trigger, the circumstances show that each of you were together. You were rowing the same boat, as it were, in this situation. You both had masks. You both threatened the people. You both were together taking the money. And when one fled, then one fired, and the other one, who may not have killed someone, actually certainly had the knowledge and intelligence to foresee that such an event could likely happen under the circumstances where someone was being threatened with their lives like this. But this, at the end of this situation, the court has used some terms, but it's the kind of situation that humans should not be put in. And that is, these two victims had completely lost their free will. You were in control of your free will. You were in control of their destiny. And you made a conscious choice to terminate the life, a human life. And you know better. You knew better. Now, 20 years, that's terrible because you're gonna have to do 10 years. Then you're gonna have to serve 1/2 before you're parolable. And that's a long time. However, two things one needs to look at in this situation. In all law and circumstances, this could have been indicted as a capital murder, where the only two options would have been life without parole or the death penalty. Because killing someone in the midst of an aggravated robbery, which is what this was, threatening their lives and taking money without their free will, subjected you to capital murder, but it wasn't indicted that way. And I'm sure your attorneys may have had something to do with seeing that your limitation of exposure away from the death penalty be done, but they certainly limited this exposure of 99 up to 99 years imprisonment or life imprisonment, because no matter what your life's history has been, we are all held accountable to each choice we make in life. And this was a choice that is completely off the center for the way you apparently were reared and your family situation. The point being is, unlike a lot of people who come before this court who have had little hope in their lives, you knew better. You knew right from wrong. And yet you still took, and you go to church and you know what's right. And still you made a conscious decision that resulted in, it was foreseeable, it could happen, that somebody would lose, a fellow human would lose their life, and another person would have to live with the horror of the fact that he's lucky and that his freedom was completely taken away from him by another human being. And that's not what's supposed to happen. We're not supposed to, everybody's supposed to, like the Declaration of Independence says, have liberty, entitled to life, and to pursue happiness. All of those were taken away from him, from the victims in this case, by you, each of you. And that's not your position. That's our Creator, not you. And you don't stand in the place of our Creator. But what has happened today is what is the very first part of the preamble of the Constitution of the United States, where we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, one, establish justice. This is the administration of justice under this circumstance. And I wish that your choices would have been so much different, that a little voice before this happened from your family's history, from your family's guidance, or from the eyes of your children, you would have reflected on how much you were going to be subject to losing by making such a poor choice, and how someone has lost something for eternity, and that is life on this planet. That is the order of the court, and that is the administration of justice under these cases. You were taken into custody, and in these cases, we are in recess.
Tim Roach and Jalen Lott pled guilty to murder in June. Police say back in 2019, Roach and Lott walked into the backyard of a home on 18th Street and tried to rob two men at gunpoint. Joel Martinez was shot and killed while trying to run away. Investigators arrested Roach and Lott after a witness came forward. Port Arthur police also used evidence from the scene and surveillance video to connect both men to this murder.